So welcome to the numbers game, and we are with our first preview of the Premier League season 25-26, and I'm very excited to be talking to David Mooney today. He's a Simpsons expert, but we won't be talking about that on the podcast because, David, you're obviously talking about your Citizens team. So yeah, just introduce us why you are such an expert on the team.
I don't know about expert, but I've been watching them for nearly 30 years now. I do Blue Moon Podcast, which is a weekly kind of magazine podcast about City. That's throughout the season. That's out every kind of Thursday night, Friday morning time. Covers the whole week and kind of reviews games, looks ahead to other games. It like dives into nostalgia, that sort of stuff. And I also do Let Me Talk with the Athletic's Sam Lee. That's a spin-off from the Athletic podcast that got cancelled in 2023, I think it was. We just set it up independently. It's me and him basically discussing after each game tactics and kind of what City were doing. He is much more of the analytical mind than I am. So if you think my tactical kind of approach in this is shoddy or not up to much, I can promise you Sam Lee's is a lot better. In fact, why I'm here, I don't know. You should have asked Sam, but you didn't trust me.
No, you're a good friend of mine, David, and of course we had to have you on. But yeah, we got to talk all things City, but last season was not a vintage year for you. So how would you rate it? Kind of talk us through what went on in this season, which was so weird. Guardiola didn't win anything.
Yeah, so it's basically a line of dominoes that all fell down. It starts with the early season form was pretty good. They come into the season and they win quite a few games on the bounce at the start of the season. They get that Arsenal game where they lose Rodri. Now they pretty much played without Rodri to that point in that season, so they've been managing. But it was always kind of a short-term thing. We manage until he's available. He plays, they lose him. They actually get a last-minute equaliser in that game and take a point from it. They probably, in all honesty, the amount that they created, they probably should have had all three in that. But still, just they got something out of it. They then, a bit later on, needed a last-minute winner against Wolves, and there was a few kind of moments in this good early start where you're thinking, like, come on, just kind of click into gear a bit better. You need to kind of up the game a little bit here. They beat Southampton at the Etihad in it was a 1-0 game, and Southampton were probably hard done to in that game. Probably deserved something out of it. And they were one of the worst teams the Premier League has seen. And you kind of go, okay, well, sometimes these things happen where like a bad team raises the game, but it's starting to have an effect now where there's a couple of these kind of problems that have appeared, and then they go away to Bournemouth, get absolutely. I'm going to say they should have got battered. They came away with a 2-1 defeat, but Bournemouth had a good opportunity to make it 3-0 a couple of times before City pulled one back. As this is kind of building on, from that point on, they like the house of cards just came down completely. So they'd lost Rodri to injury. They had one or two other injuries in the squad that, in a normal season you would probably be able to deal with, but in this season they all kind of came at once in the same position. So you're asking players to either come back when they're not quite ready, or you're asking players to do jobs that they can't quite do. I think they kind of sleptwalked into the squad problems in the transfer market a little bit, in that they'd lost Julian Alvarez, didn't really replace him. They had Savinho coming in, who's an exciting young player, but is a young player, a bit of a raw talent, needs a bit of time to kind of get moulded. Jeremy Doku had his first season, and you kind of want to see a bit more creatively from him, but then he gets injuries and he doesn't get any sort of consistency throughout the course of the season. And the midfield, it suddenly turns out, they can't run. You've got, Bernardo Silva, you've got Mateo Kovacic, and you've got Ilkay Gundogan, who all suddenly were getting done on the transition kind of game after game after game, because they'd go ahead of the ball, and as soon as the ball was past them, they couldn't get back behind it. And so City was suddenly so much more open than they'd been previously. All of these kind of things, like one leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other, and suddenly before you know it, you're in March, April time, and you're in a battle for staying in the top 4 or 5 as it was last season, compared to being in a title race. Now, like, by any stretch of the imagination, a battle for the top 4 is not a bad season for most clubs, but most clubs haven't invested what City have invested over the last decade or so. They haven't set the standards that City have set over the last decade or so. So yes, it's a bad season in that context, but at the same time, there's kind of like it was like all the chickens came home to roost at once, and that was the kind of main factor. Most seasons they've had to, a lot of the seasons where they've been successful. I've done season previews and I've done bits throughout the season where I say actually they've got this problem this season. They find a way to overcome it, and then they go on and win the title. They win the Champions League or the treble as they did in 2023. Whereas last season they had about 6 different problems and they couldn't overcome any of them, and that's basically what kept them out of the title picture. And in the end, weirdly, the solution to all of the problems was all the players that can't run, just get them in the middle and gum up the middle, make it really, really unpretty. And City will probably create something that the opposition won't, and then that got them some good end of season form. But it did also get you performances like Crystal Palace in the cup final, where I thought actually City were the better team. I thought City played, as well as this City team could play in the cup final. I thought they deserved to win the cup final. But sometimes these games happen. You can't score your chances. Your opposition get 1 or 2 decent ones and take theirs. And with that style of football that City were playing at the end of the season, that's the risk you take.
It's a difficult one as well. It's a dangerous game to play in the Premier League with it being so physical a league, as we all know. But one thing I was curious about, so I'd be interested to see as a City sort of insider, as it were, or a fan, I was convinced it would be after the treble that they fell apart, and then you just walk the Premier League almost the year after, no problem at all, and then kind of fall off the year after that, because you see this kind of gold medal syndrome where people take the foot off the gas a little bit. But do you think it's just because those problems that you've just listed are completely unrelated to the kind of mentality and the mindset of the players?
Possibly, although I mean, I'd go back to that post treble season and the 4th title in a row. I don't think they did walk that. I think they, for a long time in that season, I think a lot of us were thinking they're not up to this. They're like it's difficult to kind of reflect on it because again, the Club World Cup in that season came at a brilliant time for City. City they'd win 2, lose 1, or win 2, draw 1, win 1, draw 1. Like they'd had a run actually in that autumn time. I think worse than anything that Liverpool or Arsenal had that season in kind of back-to-back games. It was something like 4 wins in 12 games for a period in the league. And again, it all stemmed back to they couldn't control matches, they couldn't stop counterattacks, and they couldn't keep the other team from being able to transition against them, which was what led them to the treble. They do this thing, or certainly they did this thing in the treble season. They would actively reject counterattacks. So an opportunity to counterattack would come up and City would go, no, we're not taking that. We're going to keep possession. We're going to sit. We're going to make sure that you get everybody behind the ball and drop. Guardiola always says in press conferences, we dropped them. And he basically means they got 11 men behind the ball and sat in. And the calculation that he's making there is that in a transitional game where, yes, you've got an opportunity to counterattack, what it means is that your players are all out of possession. And if you lose the ball, you are not set up to deal with being transitioned against on the reverse. So, yes, you've got quality players. You might have a 60% against a 40% chance of scoring. It might be 60-40 that you'll score. But if you make the other team drop into their setup and you keep them there for 15 minutes and you give them absolutely no hope of getting out by passing the ball square and square and square, suddenly that becomes like a 70-30, an 80-20 in your favour, because the quality of players City have, more often than not, they'll create something that you'll be able to break through that low block. Now, you get into the post-treble season, the 4th in a row, that wasn't happening as much in the autumn time. They go away to the Club World Cup, and suddenly, bit of a they're off to Saudi Arabia. They win a couple of games. They beat Fluminense, and they win the Club World Cup. They come back, and it's almost like all of those problems have been solved overnight. They come back. They suddenly are able to control games again a lot better. They've got players back fit again, and they go from the Club World Cup to the end of the season unbeaten. And everybody remembers that because that's the run-in, that's the key moment.
Recency bias,
yeah. But then actually the building blocks of everything, like what they had to solve, was done in the autumn time. Whereas last season, the everything that needed solving just didn't really get solved until probably March time. They come out of that really difficult run. They have a 2-2 draw with Brighton that, I mean, they probably should have lost at the Etihad. And then suddenly they go on this kind of run of winning most games, but maybe they chuck in the odd draw. They drew at Southampton away, where they were abysmal for that game. But it was very much a case of, like this team just doesn't really have it in them to break down a low block anymore. Southampton offered no threat whatsoever, and City and didn't try to get up the pitch and said to City, "Come and break us down," and City just didn't have the answers to come and break you down, and that's where that team was at. They so like to the back end of last season, yes, I get why the drop off you would expect to come after the treble season and that ridiculous high. I also think the motivating factor for that post treble season was the fourth in a row.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah,
like the idea that I maybe this is controversial, but I think in that season I don't think City were the best team in the Premier League, but they finished first. Whereas I think in all the other previous title winning seasons, City were the best team in the Premier League and they finished first. The season before last, they did win it. And I think it took I think they were running on fumes to win it in the end. And I think it was just kind of getting everything over the line. When you get that Tottenham away game, where Son misses the chance in the 87th minute.
Was it Stefan Ortega with the save?
In goal. Like by that stage, it's kind of like, look, lads, you either do this now, or like you have the opportunity to become immortal. Don't mess it up now. And that is a big motivating factor. And I think that's basically what got them through a lot of the problems of that following season. The drop off, I don't think the drop off is necessarily related to the success that they've had in what is possibly the longest answer to that question that you could possibly need. I think the drop off is basically a number of factors: injuries, age, catching up with some people, not maybe doing as much squad changing in the transfer market as they should have done. And there's a lot of talk about whether Guardiola is entering his kind of past it phase. And I'm kind of like, well, it's one season, guys. Can we kind of wait for a bigger body of evidence before we start writing him off? But
you've got to give us some hope, David.
Yeah, but there was also a kind of like, he stuck to his guns a lot longer than maybe he should have done in certain ways. Like. The high defensive line is not something that's ever going to change, but the way that City tried to play, and get pressure on the ball, they obviously had players that couldn't do it last season, and that it took him a long time to kind of get away from that, and that cost them a lot in the kind of winter time. For about 4 months of last season, they were really bad. It kind of balanced out towards the end of the season. I don't expect them to be anywhere near that bad again.
Yeah. Well, I do want to focus on making sure that these issues have gone away. 3 huge signings this summer: Reinders, Ait Nouri, Rayan Cherki. Do these players do enough to solve those problems, do you think? I mean, have you been feeling positive after seeing the team play in pre-season?
It's weird because the answer is, again, yes and no. Because ultimately, you don't really. Those players don't really need to do a lot to solve the problems. Because when you think back to Guardiola's 100-point season, for most of that season, his defense included Nicolas Otamendi, who loved diving into challenges and was generally quite unreliable. He turned out to be that season really reliable. He had a spell where the back four included Eliakim Mangala as well, whose career has just absolutely fallen off a cliff after signing for City. Like he was a hot prospect when he came to City, and then has been basically a laughingstock in football ever since then. He played really well for a spell. And it had Fabian Delph at left back for a long time in that season. A lot of City's success has been built with not necessarily having it's kind of creating creative solutions to problems, and it doesn't always necessarily follow that you have great players and they come in and they just you just buy a player to solve the left back issue. It might be, okay, well, what do we do to protect the area of left back with the other players that we have available? And again, last season, why that didn't work was so many of the players were injured, so many of the players were carrying injuries when they were coming back into the team, or they just didn't have the legs to do the jobs that were necessary. So when you look at the players that have come in, Cherki's very exciting. He looks a very creative player. I think we have to avoid falling into the trap of expecting him to just do what De Bruyne did, because what Guardiola's very good at is looking at a player's qualities and going, actually, I'm going to get you to do this instead. When David Silva left, for instance, the idea that Phil Foden would come in and just do what David Silva did was ridiculous, because he's left-footed and short and a similar sort of player as Silva. you don't necessarily expect them to do the same thing. Guardiola will look at them and go, actually, no, your skills are doing this, so we're going to make you do this instead, and we'll work out a way for the team to build on that. It's the same with De Bruyne. De Bruyne has gone, and what he brought to City has gone. What Ryan Cherky brings to City will be similar but different. And what Guardiola will lean into is how to get the best out of Cherky rather than how to do the job that De Bruyne did. So that'll be an interesting move. I think I've not seen a lot of Reinders, so I'm interested to see how he slots into the midfield, especially if you've got now a fully fit Rodri back there, and maybe he sits a bit deeper alongside Rodri, maybe slightly ahead of Rodri. I don't know how the jobs will kind of work out. Beyond that, the kind of the Eight Nori is an interesting one as well, because I have a friend of mine at work who's a Wolves fan who says, ask him to defend and you'll struggle quite a bit with him, but when you've got someone, when you're in possession, he's great. The theory is City will be in possession a lot more than they'll have to defend, so that should work out quite well. I think the bigger concern around all of that, though, is who on earth is going to leave this squad, because there's going to have to be players going. The squad is just too big as it stands right now. I mean, we're speaking in mid-July, so there is still a month to go till the season arrives. In that month, they're going to need to trim the squad down.
And no one wants to leave.
No one wants to leave.
Opposite problem to United, where everyone's always, flirting
desperate
with
to
other clubs.
go. Yeah. But it's like, I can understand, for instance, the reluctance of Gundogan to want to leave, because he wants to join the coaching staff. He's got a year left on his deal, but he's already had a point where he's left the club and he went to Barcelona, and that was a disaster for him. So,
and got his B license as well, hasn't his coaching. Yeah.
So you can quite understand why he would go, actually, I'd rather stay here for my final year and then maybe join the coaching staff instead of going away somewhere else. Kovacic, why would he want to leave? He was actually a big part of why City ended up finishing third last season. Like he's another one in kind of these midfield positions. Chuck in a returning Phil Foden, and you've already got Rodri coming back. Nico Gonzalez, I've not even mentioned him. Like there's so many options at the moment for midfield that it's surely impossible to keep them all happy. So somebody will have to be cut loose. I'm just not quite sure where that comes. And in trimming the squad, I guess we'll get a bit of a clearer idea of how Guardiola will look going forward. I think the Club World Cup, if anything, taught us that there certainly is the desire in this team to get back to where they were and the style that they had, which was a lot more fast paced and progressive and getting runners beyond the ball. But it also showed us that there are still deficiencies there, because the Al Hilal game, for instance, they were brilliant in that first half. They lost it in extra time. They were still susceptible to the age-old problems that caused them problems last season.
Well, I want to build upon that, actually, and maybe have a look at what you would describe as the projected first 11 for next season. And then also maybe what are the tactical tweaks that are going to go into the team as well. What we've seen in the Club World Cup, but also maybe some things, as you said there, that Guardiola might address the problems with. We've seen that Ait Nouri might play more as that João Cancelo role, inverting. As you said there, defensively, he might leave a bit to be desired, but in the midfield and further up the pitch, he's so good. Does Rodri go straight back in, or is he going to be specially handled due to the type of injury that he had with the ACL? And then, as you said there, there's so many bodies in that midfield. Who's going to be starting? So yeah, what could people be looking forward to in terms of a projected 11, and stylistically, is it going to be something a little bit more exciting?
Well, stylistically, I mean, the weird thing is with City is, I think stylistically, I understand why a lot of people say they're boring, because what City do, I mean, I appreciate I would say this, but what City do is brilliant. Like, honestly, like the psychology behind making sure that the opposition do not get a sniff in games. When City were at their absolute tip-top best, the number of times where they would go away to like Bournemouth, and people would go, "Oh, that could be a really tricky tie. That Bournemouth, quite handy on their day," and City would go, "It's not going to be your day today." And the way they do it is just by keeping possession and making sure that Bournemouth don't get out of their own half, they don't get a shot on goal, they don't get a corner. Soul
destroying.
Yeah, it's soul destroying. It's that thing that I was talking about earlier of we drop them. And if you force a team to drop into their own box and they don't have possession, when they do get possession, they go, "Crikey, we've got the ball. We better do something." And then they get it forward really quickly, and City go, "No, we'll have that back. Thanks very much." And then everyone goes, "Okay, well, we better get back in." And suddenly, if you've been doing that for 20 minutes, you go, like 20 minutes into a game, you go, we're not getting out here. We cannot get out. There's literally nothing we can do to get out. And all of that is caused by City's possession and passing and kind of continual pressure. And eventually something tells, and eventually City find a way through. And maybe they step the pressure up. Maybe they increase the pace a little bit. Maybe they go a little bit more direct in various areas. Or maybe somebody goes to sleep and City go, haha, that's the moment we wanted, and they find their way in. So that is like that is directly contrary to what your average neutral wants from a football game. When you think of all the Premier League classic games, it's because this team attacks, then this team attacks, then this one attacks, then this one attacks, then this one attacks, and they've made a mistake, and they've made a mistake, and that's at the post, and then this is at the bar, and then like everything has gone in. Whereas that is the furthest thing City want from a game. And the way they go about doing it is just ingenious. But unless you're a City fan, it's really, really difficult to watch because you're watching it going like just going. They are just crushing the soul out of the other team.
It's Floyd Mayweather versus watching a slugfest.
Yeah. If you're the other team, you're going. This is brutal. Like we've got absolutely nothing. So like for stylistically, what City they'll be aiming to do that again next season. Whether they can or not is a different matter. And in terms of kind of who are the players to do that, I mean, I still think a lot of the players that were at the club or are at the club, when they're fully fit, they're perfectly suited to doing it. The problem is, can you get them fully fit? Can John Stones be available for a season? Because he's now not been available for nearly 2 years. Can Nathan Ake battle his injuries and come back? Can Rodri return from his ACL and like have the same sort of impact as he's had? Akanji spent a lot of last season injured. Can he do it now that he's back? There's a lot of questions that kind of have that same sort of but they have kind of two answers, which is, well, yes, in theory they can, but at the same time we've got no evidence that they can because they didn't when they were playing last season. So like there's an interesting kind of build for how that will look for next season.
With Akanji, Stones, Ake, I'm, for one, as a neutral, I'm glad to see potentially the end, perhaps due to injury, of the four centre-backs at the back. Like, I want to see some of them have got to go.
Wing. Yeah. Some of them have got to go because, I mean, this is the thing that... I absolutely adore John Stones with all of my heart, but he's never available. He's never fit, never available. I adore Nathan Ake. I think he's brilliant, and I think he's criminally underrated. But again, he's not been fit for a season and a half. So, like, yes, they are brilliant players, and they will be brilliant for City. But if you want a squad of 18, 19 players, as Guardiola wants, you can't have players that are going to be missing for 60% of the season because suddenly that squad of 18 becomes a squad of 15. And then one or two more injuries, as we saw last season. That squad of 15 becomes a squad of 11. And then you're playing the same 11 week in, week out, you get more injuries or you get more fatigue. So you can't let that happen again. It's got to be only players that are available. And sometimes that means making difficult decisions. And, Stones says he wants to stay. Ake says he wants to stay. Like, all of these defenders can't stay because they've got the four centre backs, as you say. They've got Guardiola, they've got Akanji, they've got Diaz and Ake from the season before last. They've added Kusanov to that. They've added Vitor Haish to that. They've added Aït-Nouri as a fullback to that. Like, the defense is stacked. They're gonna need to find somebody to move on out of there, and it's just gonna take some really difficult decisions. I think the midfield is exactly the same. The only place they're not really stacked is up front. Well, you've got Erling Haaland. If he's fit, he plays. That's kind of how it works. So I think, again, coming back round to Jason's question about style for next season, it will aim to be very similar, I think, to the treble season, to the 4 in a row season. How they do it will be interesting because they'll want control of games. They did it in the treble season by bringing a centre back into midfield. They did it in the 4 in a row season by doing something similar. You don't necessarily have to do that. They could go back to kind of like when they were pushing Guardiola up the wing. They could be looking to do that with Aït-Nouri. The width might come from the fullbacks instead of the wingers, and they might play inside. There's all sorts of different kind of tweaks Guardiola can do, but the overall setup will be pin the opposition back, make sure they can't get out, make sure you keep possession, and just beat the living daylights out of people with possession.
It looks like Shirky, at least, has been brought in to be that sort of like you say, he doesn't replace De Bruyne at all in terms of style, and Guardiola will do his own thing with him. But it does look like it's that kind of unlocking the low block, like you say.
Yeah.
De Bruyne, kind of the early balls into the box. There's 11 men behind the ball. Can someone do something or play a pass or put in a really good cross?
We had a discussion recently where somebody messaged in to let me talk and said they'd like to see City go back to more of the style of the Centurions season. And the truth is, that's gone. That's never coming back. And the reason is City beat Stoke 7-2 at the Etihad that season. And when they scored their third, there's 7 Stoke players in the box. Like that's unheard of. Like if the opposition next season when City were attacking, we're only putting 7 players in the box, then City would go back to the Centurions season and play that way again and again and again. But they don't. There's 11 players in that box, and it's really difficult to break down. They could really be improved in breaking down a low block if Haaland could do a bit more in the air, sort of thing. Because sometimes when you've got a man of his size, it'd be nice to be able to just swing across into the box and score a goal from it. Like that's one area where City don't really have that kind of option. The rest of it is kind of, it's really nice, neat, intricate passing. But I mean, this is maybe my most controversial hot take. But for a man who scores so many goals, Erling Haaland needs to learn to finish a bit better. You know what I mean? there's so many chances where you're like, mate, just put that in, please, for the love of God, just put that in.
He always ends up as well with the crosses, like you say, and the balls in the air, in these weird contorted shapes.
Yeah,
flying
and then he'll head it over at the back post. Yeah.
He's like upside down trying to get a back or something on it. I just knock.
He can't head it. He's not very good at heading it. That's what
you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. Yeah.
Haaland bot has a weakness. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
But like, if he could go back to doing what he did in 2023, fantastic. But like at the minute, like in 2023, it always felt like he was in the right place at the right time, and no matter where the ball broke in the box, it fell to him. And ever since then, it's felt like he's really had to work really, like, just so hard to get himself a chance to finish. And I don't know if that's the other teams, like, again, dropping even deeper, sticking 2 players on him, double marking him, triple marking him. Last season, I'll give him a pass for last season because he had an absolute bin fire behind him and he was carrying an injury. So
and he's still got 22 goals?
Yeah, he's still got 20 odd goals, but it's still like, yes, he wasn't putting the chances away, but at the same time, he wasn't getting any chances because what chances he was getting, he had to create himself. So that made it difficult for him. I'd like to see next season, in terms of again looking at an overall style, a way to not necessarily get him more involved. I think he's an interesting kind of thought experiment with Guardiola football, because when Guardiola arrived at City, he nearly got rid of Aguero because Aguero didn't do enough kind of for the team and didn't do enough kind of hard work around the actual build-up process. He was Bayern manager when he came to the Etihad. They had a player sent off. They ended up 2-1 up, and they absolutely battered City. But out of nowhere, Aguero scored a hat-trick, and City won 3-2. When Guardiola arrived, he was like, "We can't be having that because yes, he scored a hat-trick, but he just wasn't there for the team. Bayern were playing 10 against 11 and still dominating. It's like that shouldn't be possible against a team of City's size and stature." So when Guardiola arrived, he was like, "Sergio, you need to do a hell of a lot more." There was a real big kind of cold war going on behind the scenes of who was saying what and whether who was going to stay and where he was going to play and all that sort of thing. And it eventually ended up with Aguero doing all the off the ball work and doing becoming the complete Guardiola centre forward, and it worked brilliantly. Whereas with Haaland, it's been very much a case of we're not going to try and get him to do that. He is the centre forward. He goes up there, and we have to get the ball to him. And that's how you ended up with John Stones playing the free role in the Champions League final, because they needed that extra body in the middle to be able to control games. And I wonder if part of the answer is actually, now that Haaland is part of the captaincy group, and now that he's being kind of given this little bit more responsibility, I wonder if a lot of the answer next season might be, come on, Erling, now it's time that you started getting a bit more involved as well, rather than just being the goal machine at the top of the pitch.
Yeah.
But we've got that exclusive anyway already, Jason. The clickbait headline: David Mooney thinks Haaland's crap at finishing.
I will never appear on this show again if that becomes the headline.
But I do want to talk about maybe one of the big talking points when you come to teams and stuff is bogey teams, or maybe teams that you don't get the result that you expect against. For example, with my team, Arsenal, always seems to be Newcastle. They seem to have us absolutely licked, the physicality, the pressing. Who would you say are Manchester City's bogey team that maybe people should avoid, going into next season, betting on Man City to do well against them?
This is first off, thankfully they can't play them in the league, but Wigan for whatever reason consistently beat City. So if there's an FA Cup,
can't hurt you now, David.
Yeah, if there's an FA Cup draw that sees City against Wigan, back Wigan, because that always happens. Spurs always seem to cause City so many problems, and I mean last season they absolutely took them apart at the Etihad. The 4-0 was brutal watching that at times. And you saw what last season's Spurs were like. They were the easiest team to play. Well, they weren't the easiest team. They were the fourth easiest team in the league to play against, weren't they? Because they finished 17th. But they were one of the easiest teams to play against, and City found it so difficult. And then the reverse game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, City won 1-0, but I mean they were hanging on for dear life at the end of that, and Spurs were really kind of giving it beans. So I always worry about Spurs. It's difficult to say really, because like things change and things move along the times. Like in the back of my mind, I always still think of Everton as one of those teams, but City's recent record against Everton is pretty good.
How did City do against Brentford under Frank? Because obviously Spurs might start to move into that mould of throw-ins and making it hard for the opposition.
Brentford, very very tricky, very tricky. Off the top of my head, I think they beat them at the Etihad last season 2-1. I think that was the start of when Brentford were going on that run of scoring in the first minute every game. So I think Brentford took the lead, but I think City came back to win. And for the life of me, can't remember what was. Oh, it was 2-2 over Christmas. They drew 2-2 at the GTEC. They were 2-0 up, and that was the other thing they were doing last season, chucking away leads. They chucked away a 2-goal lead at Brentford. But generally, Brentford have caused City problems. So the fact that if Thomas Frank can,
it's arguable who's got the better squad, Brentford or Spurs.
Yeah, but also Nuno, when he became Spurs manager, was pretty much considered a laughingstock against everybody apart from City on the opening day of the season. He got 3 points, so it doesn't. I wouldn't read anything into who the Spurs manager is. I just expect Spurs to take the points. Spurs are a funny one, because it feels like the rivalry with City goes back generations. Like I was born in '87. And they beat us in the cup final in '81 on the replay with that ridiculous Ricky Villa goal, which isn't even the best goal of the game, but it's the winner, so people remember it. I remember being brought up as, well, you're a City fan, so you hate United, you hate Spurs. And I was like, why Spurs? Like, what have Spurs done to be this? And the answer is they beat City all the time. When City were bang average in the noughties, a mid-table Premier League side, it always finished 2-1 to Spurs, Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane. Even at the times when Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane weren't playing for Spurs, it still somehow finished 2-1 to Spurs, Jermaine Defoe and Robbie Keane. That's the only way that game ever went. And even in the kind of post-takeover era, there was a little bit of a spell where City would batter them for a few times, early Pellegrini, late Mancini era. But aside from that, no, they've got City's number for some reason, and I don't really know why.
What's the inverse fixture then? The one that you go into each match thinking City are going to walk this.
Don't say United.
Well, it's not been United recently. Last season, the United game at the Etihad last season, quite how either side won it, I don't know. It was two teams, like you would see better quality football at your local park on a Sunday morning.
Yeah,
it was an appalling game for a Premier League game. But this is they're not in the league again next season. But Watford, literally, we do this format on Blue Moon where for the patrons we have a show called Heaven and Hell, where we have an opposition fan on. They pick a heaven game against City and a hell game against City, and a City fan does the same. And I was speaking to Dave Walker from Football Clichés, who's a Watford fan. And I was like, we need to get you on to do a Heaven and Hell. And I was like, I look back through the fixtures, and the only two positive results that Watford have had against City in his lifetime, he was born in I think the late 80s, was a 0-0 draw at Eastlands in 2006, where nothing happened. And then later in that season, a 1-1 draw at Vicarage Road. But that can't be a Watford Heaven game, because that 1-1 draw sent them down. So, like, the
Oh
only
my
good
word.
result they've had against City in that, like, one of the only two good results they've had against City since the late 80s, they got relegated that day. So, like, it's always Watford. In terms of actually who is in the Premier League next season, I forgot Sunderland actually is a bogey team. Sunderland for years used to beat City 1-0 every season at the Stadium of Light. So watch out for that one next season. But in terms of who's in the Premier League next season, Burnley are a team that a friend of mine who's a Burnley fan always jokes that even when City were crap, it always used to be a gimme. Like whatever, we played them in the Premier League when we were crap. We played them in Division 1 when we were crap, and in Division 2 when we were crap. And beat them every time. It's like Sean goes to another one of them, like Jermaine Defoe, Robbie Keane. Sean goes to hat trick every time.
So that's what we're back in this season. Sean go hat trick.
Yeah, somehow Sean goes to get a hat trick against Burnley.
Yeah.
I mean, another team that Man City always seem to do well against, and you know, it's changed a little bit in the recent era, but they've still got a phenomenal record. It's Aston Villa. You know, they're a team on the up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you guys always seem to turn up against the villains as well, no matter the kind of form. You know, there was obviously the loss in December, but pretty much since about 2015, it's, you know, win against them.
Yeah, even in the bad old days as well, we used to always beat Villa. That was that used to be a staple. I remember surviving, or not surviving, but we the 05-06 season. We did really well in the first half of the season under Stuart Pearce. And then with 28 games played, we only got 3 more points in the final 10 games, and that was a win at Villa Park. They played 10, lost 9, won 1, and the one was at Villa Park, and it was an offside goal from Darius Vassell, so it shouldn't have stood. But it like even in the when form is at its lowest ebb, like Villa could always be counted on we could get 3 points there.
There you go. So that's another one for people to keep in mind. So looking at, you know, next season, 25-26, does the team have to win a trophy for it to constitute a good season for you? Or, you know, with the context that you've explained, is a good rebuild, the team playing better football, and maybe a title charge, but, you know, maybe a second place, is that good enough for you guys?
It's really difficult to give a definitive answer to this because, like, if City had won the FA Cup last season, it wouldn't have been a good season. It would have been a bad season where they won the FA Cup. So, like, like the inverse of that must also be true. So, like, they must also be able to have a really good season where they don't win anything. But it just so happens that for whatever reason they didn't get over the line in the Premier League. They got knocked out of the cups. Like it happens. But they had a really good season anyway. It's a bit kind of, oh God, it's a bit pretentious, but it feels like City have transcended the need to prove themselves with whatever the outcome of the season is. I think a good season for City next season, like represents a good season would be a title challenge again, because they didn't have one last season. And consistent performances, and then whatever happens, because a title challenge and consistent performances is generally what leads you to winning things. So, like, it's like if they are able to put together a season where they don't, like, you think of the 2019-20 season when Liverpool won the title. Statistically, there is an argument to say statistically, City were the best team that season. They had the best expected goals, and they scored the most goals. Best defence and the fewest goals conceded, and the fewest expected goals against. But Liverpool finished 20 odd points ahead of them. Liverpool were clearly better, but like statistically, City were doing all the right things, but the consistency wasn't there. They would win 2, lose 1, win 3, draw 1. And like they couldn't put a run together. You would say that was a bad season, but performances were okay to good throughout it. You kind of want them to be like doing that whilst having the consistency to then put up a title challenge. So a good season for next season for me is they are in the conversation for the title in the last couple of games of the season. They are in the latter stages of the Champions League. They are in the latter stages of the FA Cup, the League Cup, whatever. They don't have to win it because, you know, you can get knocked out of the FA Cup with a deflection. You can get knocked out of the FA Cup by one of your players having a mad moment and getting themselves sent off for violent conduct because they've seen the red mist. These sorts of individual problems happen in football, and it costs you games. If it costs you a game in a knockout competition, you're out. So those sorts of things happen. Over the course of the season, you find out the best team from the league because of consistency. And I want City to be back in that conversation. If they finish third, but they're 2 points off the top and they were in the title race on the last day, so be it. It's still been a good season. If they finish top and, all that is still true, even better. But I don't think it's defined by what the outcome of the season is. I think it has to be defined by performances over the course of the next, 9-10 months.
There's a lot of nuance as well to these conversations, depending on who you support, because
Yeah.
you have the luxury of winning so much that you can say, a season without a trophy, if we play well, is okay. Jason, without speaking for you, surely Arsenal would have the opposite. They would go, if we play crap all season, but we manage to win a trophy, then it's successful.
Yeah. If you're Burnley next season, if you're Burnley next season and you are terrible, but you stay up by like a point, like you've had a good season,
or get relegated and win the FA Cup.
It's so nuanced, and like it all comes down to what your aims and objectives are at the start of the season. I get why people would hear me say that and go, "God, this guy's so entitled because of everything that's gone before it." But at the same time, it's kind of like, yes, that entitlement comes from, that feeling of entitlement comes from like just analysing the words that have been said, not the context in which they've been said. And like, if you're a fan of one of the promoted sides, it does not matter how you play, as long as you stay up. You have had a good season because you've met your aims and objectives for that season. For City,
and they do what no one could have done last season. The promoted sides,
or the season before,
promoted
sides straight back down. Whereas for City, like, it has to be a little bit more than like you can't, like, if City were to get through next season, play terribly but keep stuffing games 1-0 or 2-1 and getting over the line, you go, yeah, fantastic, we've won the title, but at what cost? Like, why is this squad that has been assembled so richly and has so much talent in it, why can't it play better than this? So it all, like, the further up the table you go, the more about performances it has to be. You look at Spurs last season, for instance. They had a bad season. They, stylistically, you could see what they were going for. It left them wide open, and they ended up finishing 17th and having a bad season. If they had been that wide open and that entertaining but finished 4th, you would say the performances and everything else that have come with it had built towards what is a good season. So that's a lot more outcome driven, but still with the performance focus. I think the higher up the table you go, I think the more you have to take into account performances and consistency as well.
Yeah.
Unless you're an Arsenal fan, what do you reckon? 1-0 stuffy wins all season for the Prem, you'd take that, wouldn't you, surely?
Well, but I actually agree with David on a lot of that. Is you got to have a long-termist view of your club. And so there's a lot of malignment of Arsenal coming second again. And, we always kind of joke about that. But you can see a general upward trajectory of the club. The year before we didn't get as far in the Champions League. You put the context of injuries and things like that with the realities of how the team played. Generally, I think it was a bit of a disappointing season, but I wouldn't say that it was a bad one or that we should, malign Mikel Arteta, because at the end of the day, all the things were kind of going a little bit against the club, and we're kind of in the middle of a squad rebuild. Now, if we look at this season where, hopefully we've got Gyökeres, Zubamendi, then if the performances don't line up, the boring football that Arsenal played through vast extents last season, if we can't turn that into entertaining football and have that good underlying data and maybe a trophy. I don't think a trophy is always a measure, as David said, of doing well. I would agree with you that if it's playing well and you can see progress, then that's fine by me. Those trophies, sometimes it is luck of the draw, luck on the day. A league is more of a measure of consistent good play. And if you're coming second or third and you're pushing for the title race through the season, then that's pretty good. I think that's a fair comment.
I think for last season, I think what would disappoint me if I was an Arsenal fan, it's the same thing that disappoints me as a City fan, is that you just weren't in the conversation for the title for as long as the season lasted.
Yeah.
By the end of it, it was a procession for Liverpool, and they could afford to kind of take the foot off the gas. And it always feels like that's what makes it a disappointing season. I think, like, if you take the season before, Arsenal finished second to City, and it's lost on the last day.
Yeah.
I mean, if City, in that game against West Ham, if 2 minutes in, for whatever reason City do something stupid and the goalkeeper gets sent off, or somebody gets sent off on the edge of the box, and they play 10 on 11 and don't get the win over the line, and Arsenal win the title. City's season has materially not been that much different. It's one game difference, but it doesn't swing from being a bad season to a good season to a bad season. It just swings that they from title winners to second place. And I think, like, for next season again, that's why I think City's aim has to be in the title race until final day of the season, second last day of the season, whatever it is. Unless they're the ones winning it early, then everything else kind of has to be, you have to be competitive right until the last day of the season. Otherwise, you get that feeling of, well, maybe we could have done a bit more.
And do you think it's Liverpool that's the big rival this season, or Arsenal? Because Liverpool apparently have struck oil underneath Anfield and suddenly found 100 mil for Verts, 100 mil for Rodrigo, 100 mil for Isak.
Yeah, I hate it when teams buy success. You know what I mean? You can't just splash money around, can you? I said that on Twitter, and I got a load of earnest replies from Liverpool fans saying, "Well, actually, it's clearly a joke."
Wow.
Yeah, I think Liverpool, Arsenal, City will be the top three again. I think Chelsea have improved, but I still think they're a bit basket case. They still got the Bozo gene in there somewhere. I think City have still got the Bozo gene in there somewhere. I think they just need to find a way to cut that out, and they'll be in a lot better place. But I think your top three is Liverpool, Arsenal, City. What order at the moment? I don't know. I'm feeling the same as last season: Liverpool, Arsenal, City. But ask me again in August when City's squad's been trimmed. Maybe I'll feel City will be the favourites, and they're looking for it. Maybe I'll feel Arsenal have strengthened in the month again that has come along. So at the minute, I would say Liverpool. But I mean, any of the three could win it as far as I'm concerned right now. There's three good squads there. I think Liverpool's probably outshines the other two right now in terms of completeness. But there's still, I put it this way, I wouldn't expect City's squad to look like this on the opening day of the season. I would expect some more players to have gone, and then maybe one or two others have come in as well. So, we'll see.
And I guess the final question for you, almost like a predictive one, is who do you think at the moment, obviously we don't know who you are going to sign, who's going to be your best transfer of the summer?
I think a lot of eyes are focused on Cherki because of because of the kind of highlights moments he's had for France and for Lyon in the last kind of 12 months or so. He's obviously very exciting. This is a wild take for someone who hasn't seen a lot of Reinders, but I think Reinders alongside Rodri, from what I saw in the Club World Cup, I think he could be quite a handy player, and I think he could really give a lot of stability to this team that was missing for a lot of last season. So a fit Rodri with Reinders alongside him, I think could be quite handy, and that it could be one of those really pretentious takes of yes, Cherki gets all the headlines and Haaland gets all the goals, but actually the real work here has been done by Tijani Reinders in the base of the midfield. Maybe that will come back to bite me. I don't know, but I've got a good feeling about him. I like the look of him, and it's a decision made entirely on vibes. But there we are.
Oh, I mean, that's the way that my gran supports football as well. That's how she plays FPL, and she always does quite well each season. So, she goes, "Oh, he's got a nice face." So,
I did an FPL team a couple of years ago. I'm seriously considering giving up on FPL for this season because I did two teams. One where I tried to pick the team of players that I thought would do well, and one where I just picked players that I thought were handsome and quite liked, or quite fancied. And yeah, the team of lookers beat my team of actual skillmen. So
there was a study that politicians with squarer faces were more likely to be voted for. So maybe your nan's onto something, Jason.
Yeah. If I just pick the hot players, maybe I'll do well this season.
Yeah. That's it. Hot Players FC. That's the one to go about it. FPL. I mean, that's what Arsenal were trying as well with a lot of the players that they've signed. They're just like very in. and hoping that they'll play well. Then,
They call it aura these days on football Twitter. That's the thing.
yes,
They say, "Oh, he's got great aura," and it's
Great
just
aura.
I think they're not comfortable enough to say that he's really handsome.
He's really handsome.
looks
The
good,
other thing that I'd like to do is we do a format called the Top 10 on Blue Moon, where we get like regulars to just list their top 10 like City players that do this or do that, or top 10 headed goals or things like that, and we make them play off against each other. Really, not an original format. I really want to do the category top 10 players on their day. Because it means nothing. Like the phrase "on their day," it's just like but on his day he's a great player. But like, what does that mean? Like,
no, Memphis Depay against Midtjylland FC.
Yeah,
it's like you're just unbelievable on his day. That one day in his whole career that he played well.
Or Yaya Sanogo scoring like 2 in the Carabao Cup against Reading. You know, on his day he had a great performance. But
Georgia Samaras, a terrible player, but on his day, my word, what a player.
There is certain players it fits. It's like the streets don't forget kind of FC that you see. But on his day, you could definitely have Memphis Depay in there. He's one of them. Nani as well, if we're going United players. Players where it has to be on their day. It's a massive caveat, which means
because any criticism you level at them is just easily knocked away with. But on his day.
Yeah.
Well, David, it's been really good to have you on talking all things Man City. And as always, we say to people, check out your content and everything. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. And, wishing you guys all the best, but not better than Arsenal. And I'm sure Sam will say as well, from a Man United point of view, maybe not better than them.
I've not got my joke there.
Yeah. But
cheers, David.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for putting up with my my madness. I promise you, I'm actually quite sane.